First of all, thank you for this invitation. I'm really thrilled to do this lecture here in the MOCAD. Thank you very much. I think I will speak about 40 minutes about my work, and then maybe we can have some questions, I think, and a little talks around the subject. I will talk about my Cosmopolitan Chicken Project because this is a project that I'm doing already for more than 20 years. And when I do this lecture, I always started with this slide. And I'm saying this is not a chicken. For me, it's absolutely a piece of art. And if you look very carefully to this slide, then you can see that it is a passport. And if you read a passport, which is quite difficult at this moment, but I will translate, this is a Mechelse red cap. And what does it mean? It means that it is a crossing of a chicken with 3 nationalities: Belgium, France, and England. In other words, it is a hybrid. Now, you have to know chickens are the most domesticated animals in the world. They are also the most purebred animals there are in the world. And I try to explain a little bit of the history of a chicken before we go further. I mean, there is only one chicken in the world, which is the red jingle fowl and lives at the feet of the Himalaya. By human interest, it spread its genes all over the world by mutation and manipulation. And the manipulation went that far that you see in every country a chicken that tells something about the country. And that's very bizarre. I show you. This is the poulet de Bresse from France. It is red in the head, it has a white body, and has blue legs. So that's the French flag. So people did it on purpose. I was also searching in America, and I can see in America that we have the Jersey Giant, which is the biggest chicken in the world. If you go to China, you have the Silkie. This is directly linked to the silk that they make in China. It's like a fluffy chicken, you know? Actually, what I'm trying to say is that we try to translate our culture into a living animal. And that inspires me a lot. Because when I travel over the world and I'm searching this kind of chickens, I always see these characteristics. And then I start to think, can we do that? I mean, I think it's a very important question. Can we put a frame around a living animal? And that's why I started in 1999 with my Cosmopolitan Chicken Crossbreeding Project. What is this? Well, if we put a frame around a living animal, I was thinking, is this the right way to do that, to treat it? Maybe sometimes we have to break these frames. Even when we like that the poulet de Bresse is the French flag, once in a while I think we have to break this frame. So I started with this crossbreeding project, and I started in Belgium because I'm from Belgium with the Mechelse koekoek and the poulet de Bresse. I was showing this work. It was Jan Hoed. He is a famous curator who did Documenta 15 years ago, and he brought the project right on the border between Belgium and France. So my idea was there, let's crossbreed the Mechelse koekoek with the poulet de Bresse and generate the Mechelse Bresse, which is, in my opinion, a new piece of art. And instead of keeping this very stable, I went forwards. I went to England. I was invited by Listen Gallery to bring this chicken in the middle of London. After 20 years of crossbreeding, at this moment, I have a chicken that carries 16 different countries inside. Everywhere that I go, I try to make the mix. If you do this, It has nothing to do with the chicken. I think it has everything to do with us and how we look to the world and how we think about evolution. I mean, if you do this in a museum, in a public space, or in a gallery, I think it's a big debate. I think it's dealing with a lot of issues of today. It's about globalization, multiculturalism, cloning, genetic engineering. I believe if you bring two new parts together, that something new can come out of it. I mean, I believe in duality. I believe that if you bring these parts together, procreation is the most driven force there is. You can ask, what the hell has this to do with art? I mean, is this biology? Is this science? But for me, it's art, because it's dealing with surprises. It's dealing with the things that we don't know. And that's exactly the position from me towards my work. Because on one side, the chicken gives itself to the program, and on the other side is revolting, and I'm standing in the middle of it. I'm screaming to the subject, very frustrated. But sometimes you have to let it go. If I talk about surprises, I give you a very good example. When I was invited in England, in London, in the center there, in Listen Gallery, I started to do the research for the typical English chicken. And I couldn't find this English chicken anymore. Because in the 60s it was so popular that it becomes infertile. The infertility came by inbreeding. So that was for me a very, very, very big problem. So I went to Northampton, and I could find there a farmer who had 10 chicks. He was very glad that I was there, that I bought it, and that I brought and that I take it away, because in 10 years there was no offspring there. No, I was bringing in this black rooster. I was bringing it from Belgium, and it's the crossbreeding between Belgium and France. And look what happens. There was offspring after 3 weeks. So by bringing in the crossbreeding, the hybrid of Belgium and France, England becomes fertile again. The next day it was on the cover of the Times, because they say it's better than the European Union. Procreation, crossing, that generate fertility. The question is this, what I'm doing, is this natural breeding, or is it genetic engineering? I think it's absolute the middle of it. And I think that's exactly the position of an artist. An artist has to stay in the middle and to give comment on what's happened. And I clearly say comment and not critic. Because when you give comment, it creates more chance that there is a better debate. One of the most important slides of my presentation is this one, because after so many years of crossbreeding, I see all of a sudden on the surface all the generations returning. I see the first generation, the colors. I see the second one, the third, and so on. I think it's very important, because I start to think about genetic memory. I start to think about maybe if we give up something, it returns in another form later. And if there is already so much diversity on the surface, what happened inside? And I have to tell you something. I'm doing this crossbreeding project, but I'm not killing the chicken. I treat it as life. So if there is so much diversity, what's happening inside? So when a chicken died, together with my scientific friends, we went to see how the structure is inside. First with the chickens who died, and later with the living chickens. It generates a lot of special image. And in the beginning, of course, it was the structure when we did the scanning. And out of this, I was created the virtual crossings. I try to explain this, what it is, a virtual crossing. When a Mechelse koekoek from Belgium died, we put it in the scanner. We generate 3D images. When a poulet de Bresse was dying, we put it in a scanner, creating, again, 3D images. And then, on a digital base, we made the crossings. So, when you look at this picture, there is no chicken inside anymore. It's pure digital made. It's like prototyping, but then a crossing from a crossing that will exist in the future. I think if you bring parts together, and I said it before, it has to be open, it has to be transparent, so that we can share knowledge. Sharing knowledge is bring different professions together, like biology, philosophy, art, and it's dealing with the things of the past and the future, and that's why I'm using glass in my work. Because glass has that kind of character that you can look in it. So it's dealing with parts that were in history, parts that are in the present, and parts who are in the future. And if I'm talking about the history, then I have to jump back to where I start. I have to jump back to this red jungle fall, and every 2 years I do an expedition to the Himalaya to see where the red jungle fall lives. And I found something very special. The red jungle fall lives on the border between the jungle and society. And I think that's a very interesting position, because it's exactly the position of the artist. And I was asking to myself, and I think this is a big question. First, I was asking myself, did the chicken come to me or did I come to the chicken? I mean, it's a very simple question. But when I was taking it more universal, I was asking, did the chicken come to us or did we come to the chicken? And then we have a really deep question. So a couple of years ago, they gave me my doctoral honoris causa on the University of Medicines because of this question. Because there is a very well-known scientist, Professor Leif Anderson, who proved that it was the first move from the chicken to human. And I think it makes sense. Because searching for something to survive gives more strength. And then I was thinking, look at what we did with this animal. Every little part we use in the consumption, in fashion, construction, destruction, give and take. I also noticed in the jungle that this is an animal who gives a certain signal. And that's why I was making this work on top of the world. I noticed that it is the animal who tells the other animals when there is danger, when the danger is coming. How to balance these things, how to balance culture and nature together. And that brings me to this work where I think is very important. This is my Salvator globe. Normally, the Salvator globe is standing on top of the church. The ball stands for the world, the cross for religion, and on top of this cross there is often a rooster, and the rooster is crying above everything. And maybe this is too much power. In this case, I brought the rooster, the hens, back on the globe. And by bringing them back on the globe and turn the situation, you see the women's side. And that's maybe a better balance to move on. That's where things can break to certain borders. That brings me to the philosophical model of it, with the horizontal lines and with the vertical lines. I should say that the horizontal lines is manipulation, and that the vertical lines is the mutation. So in every situation, when things have a meeting, there is a chance that things can mutate to another level. I'm working now more than 20 years on this project. And out of the project, I generate a completely new project, which I call Opundi, the Open University of Diversity. In this project, I have 3 foundations. One is Cosmopolitan Chicken Research Foundation, the other is the Walking Egg Foundation, and the last one is the Cosmo Golem Foundation. I try to explain what it is, but I have to explain it through my work. The Walking Egg Project. Well, the Walking Egg Project started with this image. It is a sculpture that I made, I think, more or less 20 years ago. It is a glass egg with strong legs, searching for 37.6 degrees to come out. The walking egg becomes a foundation and deals with fertility in developing countries. It is driven by myself, Professor Will Momblet from a clinic in Genk, and Dr. Mario Merialdi from the World Health Organization in Geneva. I go back to this history. How does it start? So I think that the walking egg was a little bit a turning point in what I was doing. I was creating this glass egg, which is transparent, which carried the future and the past. But the strong legs were very necessary. They were very necessary to search this kind of heat to go over the world. And it is made in the factories in Venice. So there was a man, which called Adriano Berengo, and he carried the egg all over. So the walking egg is searching for this kind of boundaries. The walking egg was not only a sculpture, but also become a magazine where we make a discussion between art and science on a level of fertility. So the big question is always, what are we doing with this globe? Are we fertilizing the globe, or are we poisoning it? Again, I'm coming to the conclusion that it's about energy, communication, and life, and to bring all the different parts together. Energy we give further, communication by firewire, but the umbilical cord mostly we cut. So what to do there? I mean, it is very important to think about fertility, because fertility is the strength of our future. After 10 years of working on this project, there is a permanent installation in a clinic, a fertility clinic, and you see on one side, you see the science, the books, the pure books, and on the other side, you see the art piece, the cage. And in the cage, there is that one egg, and that one egg, which is very important. In the middle of it, there is the crossing between the chicken and the eagle. It is the power and the strength. When you bring things together, maybe it makes it more fertile. What is fertility in developing countries? The content of this project deals with the fact that there are less people fertile at this moment in the world. But at the same time, we are with 7 billion people. And I think this is a real problem. So thinking about this, you could easily say, okay, we are with too many people. But the problem is that we are not with too many. The too many is always on the other side. And I think we always have to think about the quality of life. So you have to know when a woman on the other side of the world in a developing country cannot have a child, she has a big social problem. So with this foundation, we do a lot of research around it. And we see that if we should help somebody who cannot have a child, that is on the same level of telling to the other ones who have 10 to 15 children that we can find a balance between those two. So the foundation is searching for these kinds of solutions. That's why we work together with the World Health Organization in Geneva. This is the Walking Egg Project. The Cosmopolitan Chicken Research Project is a project where we are looking into the genetics of the hybrids that I made during these 20 years. It's a foundation about hybridity in art and science. It's driven by Professor Jean-Jacques Cassiman from the University of Leuven, myself, Professor Dr. Piet Stienissen from the University of Hasselt, and Professor Olivier Hanot from the University of Nottingham, UK. There is a large research team who's working on this kind of research. How does this happen? Well, again, I have to explain it through my artworks. And I think this is one of a very important project. On a certain moment, I saw a rooster who lost his spur. And you have to know, when a rooster lost his spur, he doesn't mean anything anymore. So we were sitting there somewhere apart. And I was watching this animal. And I was thinking, what can I do? Shall I leave it there? Or can I help it? So I was asking to one of the professors, a stomatologist, is it possible that we can do an operation and that we can give him a new spur? And he said, yes, we can give him a new spur. So we did this operation, but instead of giving a normal spur, we give him a golden spur. And that's very, very attractive. Because for us, it's very important that we see it as a king. That a rooster who doesn't mean anything anymore in the chicken world, by having a very simple operation, he becomes king. I have to tell another story about this because this project was larger than I thought. On a certain moment, I received a telephone call from an organization, from an animal organization. And they saw this on YouTube. So and they say, okay, Koen, we're going to bring you to court. I said, what do you mean? Yes, they say, because you cut the spur of a rooster. I said, no, that's not true. I didn't cut the spur of a rooster. I said, I give him a new spur because he lost his spur. And I give him back his identity. So they say, no, we bring you to court. So I said, okay, then we go to court. So I went there and I did my explanation. And I was telling about the social context of this animal and to bring it back. So they were impressed about what I'm saying. But all of a sudden they say, listen, maybe you didn't cut the spur, but they say there are other laws. And one of the laws is that you cannot put implants in a chicken. And there we go. I said, my God, this is going to be a very big problem. But all of a sudden I get another thought. I said to them, I said, can you tell me what you can do with the chicken? And they say, yes, we can give you the list. I said, please, tell us. So they say, yeah, you can burn the beak, you can cut the wings, you can cut the legs, and you can kill the chicken. So I was looking to the activist, and I said, who do you like the most? So he dropped it. So I call the guy from the animal rights, and I said, listen, I did what I had to do. I'm an artist. I only give comments on society. I said, but it's now up to you to change the law. And I think it is and he said, yes, I will think about it. I mean, I think it is very important to tell this story because I think that's important that art can have this kind of strength. Thinking about all these things, I was making an installation for the Triennial of Guangzhou, which was dealing with the environment. So it was like 1,000 square meters in the museum, and I was making a jungle where the red jungle foal, the source of the chicken, lives. You can step into it, but it is the jungle with the heat of the jungle, and you have to protect the jungle. So we have to protect the source of life. This was this part of this installation. And when you went out of this installation, you go to a freezing room where all the eggs are laying from all the different generations, perfectly stamped with their number. So this is the conservation room. So the question of this installation was, what do we have to protect? Do we have to protect the jungle, or do we have to protect what we are creating? When you step out of this installation, you come into the human incubator, a big incubator with 37.6 degrees and 90% humidity to come out. I think this installation deals with the environment. How important is our environment? At the same time, what was happened, that the chicken flu came over Europe. And I had to protect my project against it. So the environment was dealing directly with my art piece. So I was making a backup. Like you make a backup in the computer, I was making a backup of the DNA of the total crossbreeding program. And I called it frozen culture. Frozen culture. So I could bring the whole breeding program, which was work for 20 years in 1 ton under minus 196 degrees. The question is this hybrid? Is this what we are searching for? And maybe is the 1 square meter the most dangerous place on Earth? How to deal with environment? Interesting was that on a certain moment, I had the big interest to crossbreed the African chicken in my project. But then again, I was not allowed to bring the African chickens into Europe. So I was stopped by borders. And I was thinking, well, if I cannot bring the African chicken into Europe, then I go to Africa. So I started a crossbreeding project in Africa. I started in Tanzania. And then I was thinking, so let's make the crossbreeding from Tanzania with Uganda. that result with Kenya, that result. And if it becomes important enough, we can bring the crossings of Africa into the Cosmopolitan Chicken Project. Because, you know, to do that there, in Africa, in an environment with a high climate, can be very important for the immunity. To build up immunity through Africa could be very interesting. So I was selected for the Biennial of Dakar, and I was presenting exactly the installation there on the island Île Gorée. Immunity raised up. So we got fertility. Now there was this immunity. I mean, the chicken is a very, very important model in science. And they expect that for the coming 50 or 100 years, it can be very important against viruses and degeneration diseases. And it was written in Nature, one of the most important magazines of science. That's why we made this Cosmopolitan Chicken Research Foundation. So we start to control the chicken not from outside, but this time from inside with the living chickens. So they took all these blood samples. And there were 3 big questions. The first question, is this about diversity? The second question, is this fertility? And the third question, is this immunity? After 4 years of study, they had a conclusion. The first conclusion is that it is an enormous variety, and it is dealing with diversity, which I was very happy with. The second is that the fertility went up from 30% to 90% in this crossbreeding program, and that the immunity came from 42 to 86. These are very important numbers. The third foundation, it's the oldest foundation, and now we have to jump back to my first sculpture that I made when I was 17 years old. And the project is the Cosmo Project. What is it? The Cosmo Project, it's about children's rights. I do it with Professor Dr. Peter Adriaansus from the KU Leuven, Jean de Vos, domestic workers in Mumbai, and was nominated for the Nobel Prize in 2015, and myself, 2005, excuse me. So, I have to jump back from the beginning when I was making sculptures. And I started to make wooden sculptures. And I was 17 years old. And there you see the wooden sculpture. But it is made in different parts. And what for me was very important when I was looking back to this sculpture, that it was already dealing with domestication. Dealing with domestication because this is a man figure which is limited. It is very cubistic. And then I was looking better, I said, wow, the head is open, but the body is closed. So that gives me a lot of inspiration. And I thought, this figure, which I called Golem at that moment, which means artificial human, I said, that gives me the opportunity to be what I am now. So maybe I have to make it from this a project where we go and where we work with children and give them the chance to express themselves in many different ways. So the sculpture, made by different groups of people, goes and travels all over the world, finding children in other positions than we are. The meaning is that they make the sculpture on a certain place, and that they fill the sculpture with their thoughts and their ideas about hope and evolution. Here you see children in different parts of the world who are working on this sculpture. When the sculpture is ready, it is empty. First, they give the sculpture their own identity from the place. And then they fill it with their works, like poets, like dance, like sculptures. Like sculptures. They fill it so that the sculptures start to live with the DNA of all the children. It is always a big party because the children can express themselves and everybody is listening to what they have to say. From there, the sculpture or the content goes to different parts of the world. In one way or another, it's the same system as the Cosmopolitan Chicken Project, but it is on the level for children. They understand this very well. To bring all these ideas together, I start, like I said, the Open University of Diversity, which is actually simply my studio. My studio is a place where you can see all the time what's going on with the cosmopolitan chicken in the world. My studio shows the different installations linked to other installations that I'm doing somewhere else. It is a studio with different identities, different places. But it's also an idea that goes to different exhibitions in the world, like you see here in the Biennial of Venice. I was putting a marble sculpture, which was the 16th crossbreed of cosmopolitan chicken, between all the scientists and all the artists in a kind of pinacothèque, which was in the Palazzo Loredan, a place where art and science come together since many centuries. In the library on top, there was the actual breeding, the biological breeding, but also the intellectual breeding. A breeding about bio and cultural diversity, where science, philosophy, anthropology, and art comes together. The project has many, many forms, many materials, many mediums, and many thoughts, like this big egg, which is a marble egg with a date that doesn't exist, the 30th February 2012. The whole project is about symbiosis. The project is about a history who can learn us what the future will be. It is a work in process, in many, many forms, and with many, many thoughts, which we can express everywhere around the world. I was very proud that the total content of the work was taken by Documenta this year in the Wortley House under the title Hybridity in Art and Science. It's about human. It's not about chicken. It's about looking together in the transparent egg of tomorrow. Because I believe that every organism is looking for another organism to survive. In my case, it's with the chicken. I thank you.